Welcome to Marketers Talking Marketing.
Welcome to another episode of Marketers Talking. Today, we're joined by Michele. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Jess. First of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. My subject matter is book publishing, and a lot of people are self-publishing books these days. So the reason I'm doing this podcast is to address some of the misinformation that's now prevalent in the industry and hopefully give authors some information that's in their best interest when they do decide to self-publish a book.
Love the rise of self-publishing because I feel like it's opened the door for so many more people to get their thoughts and ideas out there than 20, 30 years ago, where it feels like it was almost unheard of to self-publish.
In fact, 20 or 30 years ago, an author couldn't get a book into a bookstore on their own. They absolutely had to work with a traditional publisher in order to do that. And the only people who self-published back then were they called them vanity publishing companies, where somebody would just hire a company to typeset and produce a small number of books for friends and family. But there was no such thing as worldwide or wide distribution available to individuals. It all came through traditional publishing companies. So that's why when Amazon came on the scene and changed all that, it was a huge earthquake in the publishing industry. For the first time, authors did not have to depend on publishers to get their work out to the public.
Do you think everyone should write a book, or is there kind of a criteria to think about when deciding if you're going to publish or not?
I think a lot of people have a book inside them. That's a term that was used by Dan Poynter, one of the original self-publishing gurus, who is now deceased, unfortunately. But when Amazon first came on the scene, he recognized what an earthquake it was going to be. Something like 2 million books were published by independent publishers in 2023.
Wow.
So it is, yes, everybody took him up on that and realized that, hey, I do have a book inside me. But, like everything else, there's good and bad. Every time there is a field that is in such high demand, you have good players and bad players coming on the scene. And so that's why I wanted to start doing these podcasts.
So what are some of the things that people get wrong about self-publishing or pitfalls that they may run into?
Okay, well, originally, like I said, you had to go to a publishing house like Random House or someplace like that to get your book out into the world. Amazon changed all that, made it possible for anyone to distribute a book on their platform to the entire world. When self-publishing first came out, it was understood that the author was the publisher. The author would assume all the roles and responsibilities of the publisher to get their book out to the world. It was understood that authors should hire experts to produce the book, editors, designers, typesetters, ebook formatters, and so on. And that is what has changed in the last 20 years. Now we have middleman companies that are called publishers. What they do is they insert themselves between author and the distribution, and basically don't do anything that the author can't do for themselves. They take their money, take the author's money for doing that. Traditional publishers never charge the author to produce the book. The author doesn't have to pay a penny to get their book published by a major publisher. Self-publishing, the author does have to hire the experts, but then they get all of the revenue from book sales. That's the incentive. The author makes the investment, the author gets the revenue. So these middleman publishing companies now, they charge the author to produce the book, and they also take the author's revenue when a book is sold. That doesn't work out financially very well for the author, and that's the platform.
Are they typically taking like a percentage of sales?
There are 3 data points in publishing a book that you really, 2 of them you can't escape. That is the wholesale discount taken by Amazon and any other book retailer. It's anywhere from 40 to 55% of the cover price. You can't get away with that. If you want your book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, you have to pay that. The other data point is the printing cost. With print-on-demand printing, it costs, probably $4 or so, $5 to have that book printed. So the net revenue from those calculations, the retail price minus the wholesale discount, minus the printing cost, is what should go into the author's pocket when they self-publish the original way. But if you put a publisher in the middle there, now the author is paying the wholesale discount, the printing cost, whatever the publisher decides to take out of their pocket. They're left with much less, typically $5 a book every time a book is sold. So in many cases, the publisher is making more on every book sold than the author is under their model.
Is it the publisher is getting $5 a book or the author is getting less than $5 a book?
The author should get $8 a book, but if they work with a publisher, they're getting $5.
Gotcha. Okay.
Two or three. No, wrong. Two or three.
Yeah, that's quite a difference.
Yeah, but the mindset, there is still the mental mindset out there that an author needs a publisher. So my message is, remember what original self-publishing is. You don't need a publisher. You need services. Once those services are complete, the actual publishing can be done by you with assistance to upload book files to the print-on-demand platforms that are opened in your name, not in a publisher's name.
So it sounds like, if I'm hearing this right, there's also maybe some ownership or accessibility there, because you emphasize having the list or the service or the listing where you upload the files in your name, not the publisher's name. Does that become an issue?
When you work with a publisher, when authors work with a publisher, what the publisher does is they upload the files to their print-on-demand accounts. So they get the sales reports, they get the bank deposits, then they keep some of that money and they pay the author a smaller, what they call a royalty. Now, everybody's familiar with that word. It's a common publishing term. It used to mean that a publisher who paid all the expenses paid the author a royalty. That was fair because they made the investment. But a publisher who charges you for services should not be paying you a royalty. Should be making every penny of revenue because the publisher has no investment in the book.
It feels like this for some publishers is almost like I don't want to say a get rich quick scheme, but a spot where they're able to take money on both ends and maybe not do the bulk of the work that someone may think of when they hear the word publisher.
I think authors understand they need services, and they think that the way to get those services is to work with a publisher. But my business is, I guess you could call us an author services company or a publishing project management company. We provide those services, and then we upload the files to the author's own print-on-demand accounts so that they get the sales reports and they get the bank deposits, and we don't participate in that at all. And that's the option that I want to remind people is the original self-publishing model, and it still exists, but try finding it on Google. Forget it. There's so many quote unquote publishers now. You can't even find companies like mine that just provide the services you need.
Are there other benefits of working with people who provide the services to publish versus working with one of these third-party publishers?
Absolutely, because when we finish the job, you own the files that we created, as long as you pay the balance due. Now, these publishers, even after you pay them to produce the files, they control those files forever, and they will not give them back to the author in most cases. We run into this all the time. Talk to authors who want to part ways with their publisher, maybe because they didn't the royalties that were promised with them. Sometimes, fortunately, it's been because the publisher disappeared and closed their doors overnight. They can't get their files back. So if they want to continue to release their book and sell books to the public, they have to start all over again. That's a real issue. The author essentially loses control of the book when they work with a publisher.
This reminds me of Taylor Swift when her masters got sold. And so she re-recorded all of her albums to release them as Taylor's version because she had, as an artist, didn't have control over the masters. She didn't have control over distribution.
A perfect analogy.
Yeah, interesting. So if someone is thinking about writing a book and they know, I agree, I think everyone who writes a book knows there's services out there that are going to make it really like top notch and they're going to go to the self-publish route. Is there typically a budget they should have in mind for what it could cost for those services?
There's a lot of misunderstanding about that. If you follow conversations online, you will hear that you should get your book cover done at Fiverr. You should format the interior pages of your book yourself using Word or Vellum or whatever other software program or machine is out there now. And that's fine if your book is a hobby, if it's only for yourself and your own entertainment and for your family's use. That's a perfectly okay approach. If you want to sell your book to people, a higher bar is necessary. You need to hire expert editors and designers and typesetters. People don't even know there's such a thing as typesetting. People like us design the pages, decide what the font is going to be, how the chapter openers are going to look, what the captions are going to look like, and so forth. Then typeset the pages of the book according to a couple of dozen typesetting rules that make a book look like a book, aid reading comprehension. So there's a lot to it that people typically don't know. And if you listen to other authors talking on social media, you're going to get a lot of advice that experts would never give you. We know that if you want a book that's produced in the way a major publisher would do it, if you want it to look that good and read that good, that you need a team of people to help you do that. It does cost money.
Yeah, there's been a couple authors, Mark Schaefer comes to mind, where he writes marketing books. And when I've read them, I didn't realize, I want to say, I'm going to misquote, but he's been publishing books for a long time. And I didn't realize until like 6 months ago that he self-publishes. Because when you look at them, they're distributed in different languages around the globe, but they look like what you would see in Barnes and Noble, like a professional, and you find them in Barnes and Noble. Like you can't tell looking at them that they're not a professionally published book. But there's definitely books I've seen where it's like the spacing is weird. And
well, yeah, and it's not that typesetters are just kind of people who just want to waste time for no reason. Good typesetting, it aids reading comprehension because, like you just mentioned, bad spacing, kinds of things that can happen on a page that stop the reader and distract them, even for a split second, but it takes their attention away from what you're trying to say. Good typesetting also aids reading comprehension and helps people access your message. And that's what major publishers always do. They never typeset a book in Word. Promise.
Yeah. So there is the cover design, there's the layout inside, there's the typesetting. And copy editing or editing, of course. Are there other components that go into self-publishing that people might not be thinking of?
Yeah, if you're writing a business book, for example, sometimes or most of the time we will have an author come to us and say, I've done all my diagrams in PowerPoint. And usually that's not sufficient either. Again, they might be okay, but a graphic designer can take those PowerPoint diagrams and really give them some visual interest and some dimension and visual oomph, lack of a better word, that you just can't do in PowerPoint. So that's one area where self-published authors could improve a little bit and let a graphic designer do their diagrams and charts and graphs and so forth. Ebook formatting is another area that's misunderstood. You can, of course, dump your manuscript into an automatic ebook conversion program of some kind, but that's not the way a good ebook is made. Format ebooks by hand so that we keep in mind all of the idiosyncrasies of all the different devices it might be opened on. And so we try to account for that. For example, the Nook device will treat bullets differently than a Kindle. If you don't code for that in your ebook, somebody's going to have a mess on their hands when they try to read your bullet lists. So again, publishing is no different than any other business. There's always more to it than people on the outside understand. Right? Whatever you do for a living, someone can't come in off the street and just say, I can do that myself with no training and no experience. There are things to know if you do the job for a living.
Yeah, I'm laughing at that because I think everyone listening can relate to someone internally being like, marketing isn't that hard. This isn't that hard. I can do it. And then they try and take a stab at it. It's like rage moments.
There are things to know to get results.
Yeah. How long does it typically take for someone to publish a book or maybe publish once they have the actual content together?
Once the manuscript is complete, if they were to sign up for our typical package of services, it starts with editing, cover design, interior design and layout, ebook format, proofreading, ebook formatting. The typical process takes 3 to 4 months, depending on how quickly the author responds and always depending on how many changes the author makes after the process begins. I have to give people, and I do give everyone this advice, please don't start production unless you are absolutely positively certain that your manuscript is the best that you know how to make it, because it just holds things up. You
Yeah.
start changing and rewriting and thing and deleting text after production begins.
Do you have any tips for people to get to that spot where they feel like it's finished? In terms of, is it a tactic like write it, walk away for a week, come back and read it? Do you have family and friends read it? How do you get to that finished spot?
I think a lot of that, definitely, you should have other people read it and take their feedback to heart. Sometimes that can get confusing, right? You don't want to listen to every person who has a criticism. But if you hear the criticism more than once, multiple times, then you might think, okay, maybe I should address that. You don't want to drive yourself crazy and try to do what everybody else wants. You're writing your book. As far as yourself, it doesn't hurt to put it aside for a while and then come back and read it with fresh eyes, because when you're pounding away at that manuscript every day, after a while you can't see what you should be seeing, because you know what you mean to say. Somebody who hasn't read it yet may not catch your message as well as you think you're writing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I run into that with emails. So I can't imagine writing a whole book. Are there other things that people might not be aware of or that they hear wrong advice on?
Well, yeah, the do-it-yourself advice is the worst, right? But then the second, because you can't, unless you're trained, you're not going to get the same results as a book designer will. And I recommend that everybody go spend some time in a bookstore. Anyone who wants to publish a book, we've all seen the terrible self-published books. Go to a bookstore, go back to the source, see how good books are made by major publishers, and then you will recognize the difference immediately. What looks good to you, your neighbor's book, your friend's book, maybe the book you tried to format yourself, it's going to look fine to you if that's all you look at. Bring it to a bookstore. Start noticing the difference. You'll see it.
Is it possible for like an average person to publish a book and get it into a bookstore like Barnes and Noble?
I will tell there's a lot of misinformation about that too. Some of these publishing companies will say, we'll get your book into bookstores nationwide. What that means when they say that is that they're going to put your book into the Ingram database from their account into Ingram, because bookstores everywhere order books from Ingram. So yes, your book will be in the Ingram database, and it can be if you work with us too. That does not mean the book is going to be on the shelf. Authors read that statement and they hear my book is going to be on the shelf, but that's not what the publishing company is saying. They're saying it will be available in bookstores nationwide. Yes, it's available in the computer. Someone walks into the store and tries to order it, but it's not on the shelf. The shelf is difficult for anyone, any independent author to achieve. You might be able to get a local bookstore to feature your book on the local table. Nationally, bookstores have great pressure on them. They have to give shelf space to books that are going to what they call turn, and that means sell regularly. Can't devote shelf space to a book that's going to just sit there. And because so many self-published books are terrible, don't even take self-published books seriously. They don't even want to talk to you about it. Accessibility for everyone to publish has also killed the chances to get into a bookstore because so many people are doing it wrong.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of these publishers make promises or position things in ways that might not be clearly understood what it actually means.
Sometimes they're not clear. They're definitely not always clear on how the finances are going to work for the author. Sometimes it's outright deception. For example, they promise to make your book a bestseller. What that typically means, and I think everyone is on to the scam now, what that typically means is they list your book in some obscure Amazon category that gets no traffic. And they direct you to have everyone you know buy that book for an hour or so at the same time on a given day. That tricks Amazon's computer to thinking that your book is flying off the shelf. That bestseller badge comes up for about 45 minutes. And then from that point on, the publisher or the author will take a screenshot of that and say, look at me, I'm a best-selling author. You're not. It's not the truth. It's deception. There's no other word for it. I think Makes me sad because now they've almost destroyed the meaning of the word bestseller. And that's, a real bestseller means a bestseller that is selling tens of thousands of copies on a regular basis for a period of time.
Yeah. I've definitely seen people before where they self-published and then they had like 200 copies of their book that they gave away. And I always wonder, did you go and buy all those on Amazon in order to boost your sales? And now you have an excess number of your own books that you're just trying to dump off somewhere.
It's funny, some people will look at it as a marketing expense, even if they have to go out and print 3,000 books and give them away. You figure that's part of the marketing budget. But again, I don't know. I believe in karma. I think you need to do the right thing. Otherwise, you're not going to be fooled. And you're certainly not going to fool buyers, if you haven't put out a top quality book.
Yeah. Are there other misconceptions you find people have when they're working with these publishers?
Well, like I said, the transparency. These publishers will just say, here's the retail price we recommend. And they typically recommend a higher retail price than they should because they know they want to get their money out of it. So they put it up on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or whatever through their Ingram account, a higher price than they know will sell, then that they can get their money out of it. So they just tell the author, here's your royalty. They don't reveal the formula of how that royalty was arrived at. So we do that for people all the time, and authors can test that royalty figure by going to the calculators at Amazon, kdp.com, and ingramspark.com. They can plug in the retail price, the wholesale discount, the printing cost if they know, and you can find the printing cost at KDP and Amazon and Ingram Spark. See what that bottom line is, and it's typically much more than the royalty that publisher is promising you.
It's unfortunate that some people get caught up in this when they don't know better, and they almost end up getting taken advantage of.
They do get taken advantage of, and so that's really my message, is that you don't, I had to put it in one sentence, you don't need a publisher to self-publish a book. It's an oxymoron, right? You are the publisher. You can be the publisher. Distributing your book through KDP and Ingram Spark is available to you, clicking a few buttons and filling out a form. The services are also available to you from companies such as mine that provide all the services and help you every step of the way without taking a penny of your revenue from sales.
All this kind of reminds me of the guy that I used to see infomercials for him, where he had a suit on with a bunch of question marks. And he sold, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I remember him.
Yeah, where he sold the book on how to make money. And I think one of them was selling a book on how to make money.
Yeah, I do remember. And it's funny. It's like publishing has been turned into that kind of thing where everybody some of the companies out there now owners clearly don't even have any book publishing experience. You can tell just by looking at the work they're putting out. But maybe they published one book, or maybe they're entrepreneurs who saw that there's a huge market out there and I'm going to get in there and offer services to fill that need. But they don't know what they're doing. The books sometimes look terrible. It's unbelievable.
Is there a good way to kind of vet or evaluate if you're looking at using either individuals for different functions or working with a company like yours? In a world where on the spectrum of quality, we're saying, don't go on Fiverr for everything. Don't try and put it in an ebook converter or just put it in Word and format it there, work with professionals. Is there any tips for people who are looking at working with people on how to evaluate if they really know what they're doing or not?
So again, I'm going to point you back to the major publishers. Go look at what they're doing. Go to their websites. Look at the books on Amazon. See what the covers and the interiors look like. And if you are interviewing, let's say, a cover designer, you're looking at their portfolio and those covers look pretty good, open up another window on your browser and look at what the major publishers are doing in terms of cover design. Hopefully designers should be working at that same level. There's a lot of designers out there now that you can see, if you look closely, all of their covers are the same. They may swap out the picture and put on a different title or change the font of the title, but the overall concept of the book cover is the same for every customer. And they might work less expensively because they're not spending the time to custom design the book to achieve you want to achieve for your audience. And so, again, go look at the best sellers in your category. What do the covers look like? Because when people go find your book on Amazon, Amazon is going to show them those best sellers. So you don't want to stand out for all the wrong reasons by producing a cover that only you like. You want it to look as credible as those best sellers so that people will give you a chance even if they've never heard of you.
That's a good point. They are going to display it against those other books in the category.
Amazon takes care of itself, right? They'll put your book up if somebody searches for it, but they're also going to put up the books that are similar that are selling a lot.
Oh yeah. Amazon's in it to make money. Yeah. Is there any other advice or guidance you would give someone who's just starting out on this book writing journey, who's listening and saying, I'm going to publish that book that's in me?
Yes, I think don't shoot yourself in the foot by not producing that book after you've spent all those months, maybe years. I'm working for an author right now who's been writing his book for 40 years. We just got through typesetting 500 pages of poetry for him. He's been working on these poems for his entire life, and now he's going to self-publish. You worked really hard to make every word perfect, and you slaved over it, and you put your heart and soul into that manuscript. Don't sell yourself short now. Work with somebody who can bring that manuscript to life and give you a beautiful book that looks like it came from a traditional publisher.
I think that's such a great piece of advice. I can say as an avid book buyer, I will often buy my book based on how it looks too, in addition to if it's doing well, but I'm definitely drawn to books that like look a certain way, and I've realized it and I've tried to correct the bias in me, but if a book looks a certain way, I'm likely going to buy it because I associate with other good books that are really good that I've read that look similarly.
That's exactly correct. People do buy books based on how the cover looks, right? Then they'll flip around to the back or they'll read the text on Amazon, and that is what makes them decide whether or not to buy. But first we have to get their attention. We have to make them stop. That's the function of a book cover.
Yeah. Well, Michele, if people want to learn more about you, they want to work with you, where do they go?
You can go to 11design.com and you'll find portfolio samples of our design work. You'll find educational articles. I also publish all of my prices online. I believe in being 100% transparent. You go there, you can book a consultation by filling out our contact form, and you can also download my free book called Publish Like the Pros. It's in PDF form. It's a quick read, only 88 pages, but it'll walk you through, I think, is the best way to proceed through self-publishing once you have that manuscript. And we are not the kind of marketer that's so common today, where if you contact us, we're going to start sending you 3 emails a day until you give in. I don't believe in that. You can book a consultation. We'll have a respectful phone call with you, and if it's a good fit, great. We'll be delighted to help you with your book.
Awesome. And we will put links to all of those in the show notes below. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of your knowledge.
Thank you, Jess. I appreciate being here. I hope it was helpful.